Okay.
Okay, thanks, John.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 5th River Falls Planning Commission meeting. First thing we'll do is say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, can we have a roll call, please, Brandy?
LaRue? Sorry, am I muted? LaRue?
Oh, here, sorry.
Hoffland? Hoffland is here and buffering. Prendergast?
Here.
Watson? Moody?
Here.
Hinsman is excused, and Mayor.
You here? Okay, thank you. Next, move on to approval of minutes for the November 16th regular planning commission meeting.
I'll make a
Mr.
motion.
Mayor, I would like to make an amendment to that.
Okay,
The public comment right now reads, LaRue commented that this month marks 120 years for public power. And actually what I said was hydropower. There's a difference, and I'll tell you why. A lot of places had public power, but they were generated by coal and diesel. But the people that were running our city back in 1900s, that George Shinnick and Andrew Lund, decided to invest in hydropower, which doesn't have a byproduct. Coal and diesel would have byproducts and would have polluted the Kenny. And also you have to have a supplier and constantly buy coal and diesel. But with their vision, the water running downstream is the only fuel we needed to have our hydropower. So I would like to move to amend the November 16, 2020 meeting minutes, the first sentence under public comments to read, LaRue commented that this month marks 120 years of River Falls hydropower.
okay,
Second that if it's necessary.
okay. Let's take a motion on the original minutes, and then Patricia, we can do your amendment to that.
Okay,
Okay,
right.
And I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the November 16th meeting.
Second.
okay, we got a first and a second. Then Patricia, you would like to make your amendment then?
Yes,
Okay.
I would like to. I don't have to say it all over again.
No,
Okay.
that's okay. And Lisa, you had seconded it?
Yes, second.
Okay. Was there any other discussion on this? Okay, so we have a first and a second on the amenda. We have a first and a second on the amendment. Brandy, if you want to roll call that.
LaRue?
Yes.
Hoffland? Okay, I'll come back. Aye, Hoffland? Okay.
Aye.
Prendergast?
Yes.
Watson?
Aye.
Moody?
Aye.
And Mayor.
Aye. Okay, then we have first and second on the meeting, on the minutes. So we'll take a call on that. Brandy?
Okay. LaRue?
Yes.
Hoffland?
Yes. Aye.
Prendergast?
Yes.
Watson? Moody?
Aye.
And Mayor.
Aye. Okay, next move on to public comments. John, is there anybody in City Hall? In the chambers?
No, there isn't anyone here.
Okay,
And there are a couple people online, but just asking Sam here, there was just people wanted to talk about a setback, right?
It's my understanding that no one was planning to talk, but we have their information if they decide to.
okay, and that's fine.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Okay, well, let's move on then. We'll move right into ordinance. The first ordinance is amending and recreating chapter 17.124 of the Shoreline Protection Regulations. And Brandy will walk us through this.
Okay. Working on it. Oh, you're seeing the wrong screen, aren't you? Do you see a bird?
Yep.
Yeah, that's not right.
It's a pretty bird.
Oh, what's going on, John? How do I unshare?
Right, share the other screen.
I swear I told it to share screen one. It's reversed, I think.
Okay.
Okay, now you're looking at yourself.
Correct.
You are? This is not working. This is not working. Okay,
Can you drag it over there?
hold on, I have to panic first and then, okay, here we go.
Nice.
Take your time. There you go.
There we go.
Panic is hopefully done. Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you for putting up with my technological unsavviness. Thanks for being here tonight. So this presentation is going to be hopefully a brief follow-up to our November workshop on the shoreland and shoreland wetlands zoning. If you recall from that meeting, we provided the draft ordinances in a track changes format and compared the existing ordinance with the proposed regulations. And then after the meeting and our discussion at that time, it was determined to bring, that staff should bring back the proposed ordinance, generally written, but in a clean version. So we've done that. There's a clean copy in your packet. There were a couple of minor changes that were made to the document based on that November discussion. The first was basically just renaming the shoreland wetland regulations. So now they're being called regulations for the protection of wetlands within the shoreland. It's a mouthful, but I think it's clear what we're trying to do with the ordinance. And then the other change was very minor. It was an amendment to section 1610.115 of the subdivision ordinance. And that's simply to correct a cross-reference in the existing code. So tonight I wanted to give you a quick overview of the proposed ordinance. So like we talked about in November, the key takeaways from the shoreland wetland ordinance is that it's intended to regulate land use within wetlands, all the wetlands within 300 feet of the ordinary high water mark of a river or stream. So that's the use section of the code. The shoreland zoning is where it's a bit more complicated, and that's where we regulate the placement of buildings rather than uses. So it's further broken down into the pre and post 1982 annexation areas of the city based on DNR's requirement that post 1982 areas can't be regulated more restrictively than NR 115. So if you'll recall that we proposed a setback of 120 feet in the pre-1982 area, and the exception to that rule would be properties in the downtown overlay, and those could adhere to 175 feet if additional stormwater standards are met. So that exception, if you'll remember, is a holdover from our existing ordinance, and it was determined by the Planning Commission in November to keep it as is and not expand it to the entire pre-1982 area. So the post-1982 setback is proposed to be 75 feet. In addition, we also were going to implement a 15% impervious surface limit within 200 feet. And the purpose of that is to provide a level of protection that's comparable in scale to our existing ordinance, but it also provides flexibility for landowners if they wanted to build an addition or some small structures on their property. So that's the quick summarization of what's in the document. And the remainder of the presentation, we're going to look at maps to get a key in on a couple of key areas in the community. Okay, so in this first example, we're looking at the northwest corner of Main Street and Quarry Road. So this is just north of McDonald's. The parcels are zoned B3, and this area is in the post-1982 area. So what the buildings are that you're looking at is a single-family home on the far west side, a small commercial strip in the middle. That's where the Kinney Vet Clinic is. And then the little building on on the right that's closest to Main Street, that's the nonprofit Sart House. So what you're looking at is the gray layer underneath is the existing shoreline buffer. So you'll notice that 2 of the 3 buildings are completely non-conforming, whereas the little building is the only one that is conforming in the current regulations. The proposed conditions are shown in blue. The solid dark blue is the proposed shoreline setback of 75 feet. The crosshatch is the area where the impervious surface restriction would come into play. So I asked Sam to run some calculations to compare the level of conformity on the sites with proposed conditions. So the southerly parcel is fully conforming under the new regulations. That building that's there is just over 1,000 square feet and covers 14.6% of the area within the 200 feet where the impervious regulations would apply. So that parcel is fully conforming under our new regulations. The other parcel, not fully conforming, but less non-conforming than it currently is. So there's 34% of the building footprint lies within that 200-foot area. So in this example, we're looking at newer lots in Spring Creek Estate subdivision. As you can see, there's a couple of properties down there that have existing shoreland, that gray area that extends into their lots. This creates restrictions for these guys in that they can't build additions, sheds, or sometimes decks in those places. So under our proposed ordinance, the impervious surface restrictions was only applicable to the major waterways, the Kinney, the Rocky Branch, and South Fork. These dry runs and smaller tributaries, we didn't apply the 15% impervious calculation. So for these areas, all of the parcels become fully conforming. Okay, so this map demonstrates that steep slopes are found continuously throughout the city along our rivers. So in our research, we found that slopes were frequently cited as a crucial landscape feature that must be protected to maintain water quality. And the recommendation for the 120-foot setback was derived with this in mind. Our research from the UP up in Michigan they have similar topography as River Falls, and that research that we looked at suggests that setbacks should expand to capture steep slopes. And the regulations they used took 120 feet as the biggest setback in their study. Alternatively, we found that for areas in Wisconsin that have lakefronts, which is most of the state, and we're more unique in the fact that we have these steep slopes surrounding our waterways, there's diminishing returns if you're going beyond 100 feet. So we took both of these ideas, the 100-foot and the 120-foot, and combined them to try to make our ordinance a little bit specific to us. So we've got the steep slopes. So we wanted to go with 120 feet, which is an approach that balances our desire to protect our rivers and our slopes, but also reduces the restrictions where benefits might be less substantial. Okay, so now we're going into the pre-1982 areas of town. So this map depicts single-family homes along Roosevelt Street, and the Moose Lodge is the big building on the right-hand side. So the existing setback is 175 feet, and it renders most of these structures non-conforming. So many of the homeowners would find it easier under the proposed ordinance to be able to expand or make modifications to their homes. This map shows similar effects for structures along the South Fork. So with the existing 175 feet, pretty much all of these parcels have non-conforming structures on them. Under the proposed new setback of 120 feet, not all of them, but many of them do come into compliance. And this map shows structures within the shoreline setback on North Main Street. So the buildings that we're looking at are, I think that's a single family house and a garage in the southmost end. And then in the middle, there's three parcels that have the Kinney I'm forgetting the name of the business, but the kayak business on Main Street. And then the building to the north, I believe, is a housing authority property. So the majority of these buildings, they would also remain non-conforming under the proposed ordinance, but the ones that are closest to Main Street, they would become fully into compliance. So this map shows the downtown area. So the yellow line is where properties within the overlay can approach 75 feet if they meet the additional stormwater requirements. And the Depot City Station property is located in that area. It's on the southwest corner of the map. And the owners that cannot or opt not to meet those additional requirements in downtown, they would have to adhere to the 120-foot setback. Okay, so you're probably wondering what can be done with the buildings that will continue to be non-conforming under the ordinance. First, I want to point out an omission from the draft ordinance that will need to be addressed before it goes to City Council for review. So if you recall that the post-1982 area cannot be regulated more restrictively than NR 115, the current draft has the exact same regulations for both the pre and post-1982 areas. And that can only be done if both are less restrictive than NR 115. So when we wrote the draft, we inadvertently used an older PDF version of NR 115, and we would like to correct that. And so we offer the following suggestions for standards for non-conforming uses. And we think that this could be applied to both the pre and the post 1982 areas. So the standards, we're suggesting that a non-conforming structure could be expanded if it is a principal structure. It has to be at least 35 feet away from the ordinary high water mark. A horizontal expansion could occur as long as that additional footprint is not bigger than 200 square feet and it doesn't go any closer to the ordinary high water mark than the existing structure. And then vertical expansions could also occur as long as the building as long as the vertical expansion is limited to 35 feet. And then finally, any non-conforming structures that would be relocated on the site, they could, as long as they're not moved closer to the waterfront. So our recommendation is to forward the ordinance to City Council with a positive recommendation with the amendment to the non-conforming structure section that implements these changes. And that is all. And I will try to unshare my screen.
Okay, thanks, Brandy. So let's start with some questions.
Do you want a
Actually,
motion first?
yeah, let's take a motion first on this.
Mr. Mayor, I move for the approval of, let me get this right here. Sorry. I move for the approval of the ordinance amending and recreating Chapter 17.124 Shoreland Protection Regulations of the Municipal Code.
This is, oh, sorry.
And ordinance creating Chapter 17.117. Oh, nope, that's the next one. Never mind. Just the first one.
This is Patricia. I'll second that.
Okay, we got a first and a second. Now let's start with questions. Who'd like to go first?
Go with an easy one. Who is our zoning administrator?
That's pretty much anybody in the planning department that Amy designates as such. But generally it's me and Sam.
17.124.040 says zoning administrator shall have the authority to issue permits. So I was just curious who that is.
Yep, that's us.
Okay, thank you.
I like those softballs. Let's keep them going.
Okay, anybody else? me and Sam had kind of talked a little bit about this, but I'm just wondering, with the, I always get the pre and the post screwed up. Here, I took notes. So with the post, anything after anything we annexed after 1982, it's 75 feet from the ordinary high water mark, correct?
Yeah, yep,
But so what we're saying now, since the DNR screwed everything up, everything pre-1982, you guys want to go to 120 feet from the ordinary high water mark.
yep. So go ahead.
I was just say, unless it's in the downtown district and they put in the extra stormwater.
Yep.
So why can't we go outside of, if we can do that downtown, if people outside of the downtown district want to spend the money on the extra stormwater standards or whatever extra they have to do for stormwater, why can't we go to 75 feet there? The way I look at it is a lot of pre-82 stuff, that's where you're going to get a lot of redevelopment. So I'm worried that 120 feet might make it very prohibitive on a lot of people to do that. Or am I missing something?
Now, is that a question for staff, or because it's really more of a policy discussion, I believe?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll respond.
Yep, go ahead, Hal.
In my thinking, what this acknowledges is that that downtown we have, a historic area where buildings already are very close, and 75 feet is I think appropriate. As you move out of the overlay district, we're entering into more residential type areas. And we also have, in addition to that, steep slopes. And so when I look at, especially the map that Brandy showed, that showed the steep slopes overlaid with the new 120-foot shore, or the shoreland setback, kind of those pink slopes and orange slopes. What we're trying to do here is to protect the soil erosion potential that there is going down into the South Fork, going down into the Kinney and the other major and the South Fork and the Kinney basically, because we're talking about this main area. So it is a sensitive area that I think, I don't disagree necessarily that there might be some opportunities for redevelopment, but I also want to balance that against the protection of the river. And, there's a lot of areas that could be redeveloped. And my feeling personally as a Plan Commission member is that we don't, not that we can do redevelopment. It doesn't have to be right on the river itself, where we build a building of that size, and that's not saying that the existing buildings can't be added to, there's this exception or 200 square feet and staying, the same distance or so, or within the setback area. So I think it's a balance, but that's why I've argued for a smaller setback in the core part of the downtown in the overlay district with the added stormwater, but going to the regular setback once you get out of that overlay district.
But even when we get out of the overlay district and if we require the people to put in the extra stormwater, isn't that why we're having them do the extra stormwater, to help with the runoff into the river? Wouldn't that take care of that problem?
I think
this might be something for staff. I guess I'm not sure, or even Crystal.
Sure. Not necessarily. So the extra stormwater has to do with infiltration, and that's
Yep.
those small rain events.
Yep.
Those steep slopes will erode in the big rain events.
Okay.
So while we're protected in those smaller events, if we have that shorter setback, those, even if they do additional stormwater, those slopes are really still susceptible to erosion in the bigger events.
Okay. So in part of the package you guys had sent us, we were talking about, and I think Brandy had hit on it too, about once you get to 100 feet, the extra, excuse me, the extra 20 feet really is of no added benefit. So do we really need to add could we put it to 100 feet?
Mayor,
Yep.
I didn't explain that very well.
Okay.
I think Sam can do a better job.
Okay.
But basically, we looked at two studies. One of them was all inclusive for the state of Wisconsin. And I think that was focused primarily on the types of waterways that are lakes and rivers that don't have the steep slopes that we have.
Okay.
And Sam, you can pick up here anytime because I think you have a better handle on the science for this.
Sure. How about I start by sharing the graphic? I don't know, John, are you able to allow me to share my screen quick? I'll share the graphic that we derived this from, and it will help you visualize it much better than the air photo.
Okay. Sorry for all the questions, but I know we've been doing this for 4 months, 5 months, and I still, all the pre and post stuff still confuses the heck out of me.
Yes, it's a lot to wrap your head around. Yeah, I'm still unable to share my screen. So Brandy, I was going to share the steep slopes cross section that's in that Lake Superior.
Okay, I can find that.
Here, I'll get
Okay.
it. I can get you.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Let me find you. 3, 2,
All right.
1. There you go. Sorry.
All right. Okay, can everyone see?
Yep, you might want to zoom in a bit. There you go.
All right. So we took this, 25% steep slopes are found pretty much in most places. It's important to not get hung up on how tall they are or how far back they are from the river. We're focused on the pitch of the slope. Now, this model shows, ideally you go site by site. This takes a lot of data collection, a lot of engineering work that we don't have the capacity for to get a site-specific setback for each location. So we just went for the full 120 right here. And you'll notice too, it does preserve some of the flat section above the slope. Again, it would take a lot of engineering to tell whether, if you could build on that flat section, would the rest of the slope remain stable or not? I don't know offhand. We wrote this in mind to be easy to administer and to grab as much environmental benefit as we could while still freeing up much of the setback that currently is in place. So that's how we arrived at the 120 based on this sort of cross section here.
Okay.
Another thing to consider too is it's good that we're talking about runoff because that is huge in protecting the water quality. Additionally, we considered shoreline zoning. The goals that the state has set forth are also about scenic beauty, protecting green space. So we've heard a lot of feedback from the community via the Kinney Corridor Plan or other development projects that have occurred that there is strong desire to preserve sort of green corridors around our rivers. So that gets us here. We're in a place where we can decide how much, it is a balance between development and environment. So that's how we arrived at 120, but we're open to hearing other questions or ideas.
No? Okay. Thanks, Sam.
Yep.
Okay. And that, so with the, I'm sorry, just one more thing. With the 120 feet, we're not, I know we've talked about this before and there's nothing in the agenda about it, but this takes out the whole, depending on like kind of like what Sam was just showing us, depending on what the slope is, you got to add extra feet onto that. That's out of it, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
So it's really simplifying it and it's making the rules the same for everybody across the board.
Okay.
at least depending on pre and post.
Okay, thanks. I'm sorry, I interrupted somebody.
I was going to just ask if I could comment.
Yep, sorry, Al, go ahead.
Um, I think it's important to remember that you know we are decreasing the current setback significantly in many places from 400 feet or 350 in some places now to 120. So this is a major change. I think it's a positive kind of refinement of the current ordinance and so and especially in looking at the steep slopes and where that 120-foot setback comes into play, I think Sam and Brandy have done a really good job kind of balancing the priorities. I would also agree with what Brandy said, and that there is a desire, to maintain, and it's not just the runoff, but these river corridors, even through downtown, are places where wildlife and birds and so forth are moving through our community, and so many of us who enjoy birds in our regular neighborhoods, these corridors are how the birds are getting to your bird feeder just in any part of the downtown area. And there's a lot of really just a lot of benefit to maintaining that slope in natural and just a little bit over the top. So I would encourage everybody to stick with what we've got here if possible.
Thanks, Al. Okay, anybody else?
Mayor, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It's fairly specific, but looking at the steep slope setting, and I guess a couple things. I know we've looked at the corner of the 641 property, and I believe the Runslows, the owners of the property, online listening to the meeting. But I look at that and I zoom in on your steep slopes, which goes to 120. I'm curious why, if you can follow that across South Main Bridge and that first parcel you come to, you've got the river, you've got the slope and the steep slope coloring, the setback blue, the existing shoreline in gray, and there's a steep slope marking in there. So is that marking at the 120 foot, or is that marking further out than the shoreline setback is that they can't build on? Or I'm just curious what that orange into the gray signifies for that particular parcel, because I know we have spoken about it and I suspect there's still interest in something happening there.
I'm not following where you're looking at.
Grab the map that's got Lake George and all of the orange on it with the steep slopes.
Oh, that I had on the PowerPoint?
Yep, page 11 of our packet. And then if you look under the word shoreland, that would be Main Street coming across the river. So then right across the river on the left, if you're looking at it, would be the 641 property that we did have people interested in doing something with. Has become an issue, and I know that's a steep slope. I've walked it, I've measured it, and I'm just curious how.
Sam, can you share your screen?
So does it look to you like it's an orange circle circling part of the property almost?
Kind of, yeah, coming out past the blue out into the gray. So I'm curious, what does that mean for that particular parcel?
So the orange is just identifying where the slope is, and as I recall, it's flat, and then it's like it's like a shelf, like a dip, and then it's flat again, and then it drops off.
Okay. So in that picture in my head, so building wise, they could not go up to the orange, or can they still build to the blue? Or
let's pull up the map if possible.
Yeah, let me log in quick.
Is that map number 3 you're looking at, Lisa?
I'm looking at, I can just tell you it's page 11 is my best. It's the steep slope right after the Shoreland, yeah, steep slope. And then after that is the conclusion. So it must be the last map in that first part.
Yeah, so it's the steep slope map that we saw. For some reason in my packet, it's page 7.
Oh, that's why I can't.
Um, and I believe Randy and Sam, correct me if I'm wrong, but it would be the blue line, and that would be the 120 feet.
Okay. Yes, the blue line is 120 feet. I'm sorry, I was getting lost in the map because I was looking at the Kinney and not the South Fork. So you're asking if how the orange slopes interact with the blue line in that map?
Exactly. Yeah.
The map is just to demonstrate that there are a lot of slopes in the vicinity.
Okay.
The ordinance doesn't regulate the slopes other than the fact that we're accounting for them based on the fact that we have 120-foot setback now.
Okay, so blue is the 120 foot.
Yep, and that would be the line.
And the slope goes beyond that. So like Sam said, that blue would be maybe to the lower slope because then it comes back up to the next level.
Yep, so that little bit of pink that overlaps with the gray, that could be built upon.
Okay.
But anything in the blue could not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sorry that took us so long.
No, that's fine. It's just, it's confusing to me in blue and orange and I need green.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa. Anybody else have anything they'd like to ask?
Okay, you can unshare now, Sam.
Yep.
Thank you.
I can't see everybody, so if you got your hand up, just say something.
Okay, sorry, I was frozen. I
No.
do want to remind to the subdivision ordinance prevents building on steep slopes, and the ones that you see from the image I just showed are kind of these are where steep slopes are likely. It's an overhead flyover sort of GIS layer, but at the time of development review, we take a look at where those steep slopes are up close and on the ground.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Sam. So if there's no more, I guess we'll, we got a first and a second on this. Brandy?
Just a point of clarification.
Yep.
Hal's motion did not include any language about amending the proposal based on the error that we found.
Here, can we rescind the original motion and have Hal make a new one?
I'll make a friendly amendment to my own
Okay.
motion and add the new language corrections as proposed by staff. If whoever seconded it agrees.
I second it. This Patricia, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, Brandy, first and second.
Okay. LaRue?
Yes.
Hoffland?
Aye.
Prendergast?
Yes.
Watson?
Aye.
Moody?
Aye.
And Mayor?
Aye. Okay. So from there, sorry, I'm scrolling up through my agenda here. Sorry. Okay, so from there, we're going to go into ordinance creating chapter 17.117 about breweries, brew pubs, wineries, and distilleries of the municipal code. Amy Peterson will take us over this.
This is John. We do have Larry on the phone.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Larry.
Actually, Mary, you're correct. I'll get started.
All right.
So this is an item that staff actually started looking at back in 2017 when Swinging Bridge was moving into downtown. Prior to that, we had Rush River, of course, located in the Waco Corporate Park. And since that time, we've had the Garage Bike Hookers locate in downtown as well. So this item has been on our radar. And so as these uses become increasingly popular, staff's recommendation that providing some specific parameters for these uses in our code would be a good thing. So it provides both information for the businesses as well as staff in order to review these proposals. So with that, back in November, I had informed you that we had brought on a consultant to assist us with some of this backlog of ordinance amendments that we have, and to do some special projects for us as well. So Mr. Kirch is with Prolog Planning Group. He is with us this evening, and he has drafted and researched much of this ordinance. So I will go ahead and turn it over to him, and he can provide you with the presentation on this item.
John, can you hand over control to me so I can share my screen again?
In 3, 2, 1, there you go.
All right. Okay, almost there. Hold on. Okay, take it away, Larry.
Thank you. Greetings, Mayor, Planning Commission. It's a pleasure for me to be here tonight. I appreciate having the opportunity to work on this. I apologize for my slow internet connection. I think I'm actually logged in twice now on screen, so I can see the screen, but people fade in and out. I apologize for that. As Amy indicated in the staff report in the memo that I wrote, it kind of gave a lot of the background on, and Amy did a great job of explaining why we're doing this. You have 3 existing breweries, brew pubs in town now, but they're not clearly defined in the zoning code as permitted uses. They have been allowed through interpretation of the zoning code, which is typically how cities have done this. So as part of the background on trying to find out what other cities in Wisconsin do, I think some of the original draft back in 2017 was based on Hudson, right up the road from you, and how another smaller community deals with breweries. But in the meantime, I looked at, or tried to find regulations around the state, and looked at, I don't know, 6 or 7 cities: Sheboygan, Green Bay, Janesville. Milwaukee and Madison seem to have the most regulations. They have a lot of breweries and brew pubs. Obviously, Milwaukee of way different scale. But and then this has been looked at from the planner's perspective for a number of years as an economic development driver. And I think you've probably seen that in your own community, how these breweries and brew pubs can turn commercial districts around. So they have had lots of publications on that. There's definitions from that aspect from the Planning Association, from one of their zoning publications. We felt that there would be some benefit to the existing establishments if they were more clearly defined in the code, but not to, you know, make them nervous that we're now going to like over-regulate them. So I think that's the balance we're trying to do here. There are some newer trends in the industry, if you will, that these breweries are becoming all different sizes. What are really now called nano breweries, micro distilleries. You see a lot of breweries that may be, I'm familiar with one, read someone's business plan where they were going to put a nano brewery in kind of the entryway of a movie theater as a way to get started in the business. Micro distilleries, a lot of restaurants are going to just have a very, very small scale micro distillery as part of their overall business plan. So I think it's still a trend. So we think some modest regulations will promote their use, and actually for the existing establishments to, I think, we hope have some more confidence in that they are now really more defined in the code as permitted uses. So Brandy, the next slide, if you will. So alcohol is related in Wisconsin in Chapter 125. So this ordinance, as you page through, it's only a couple page ordinance, but at the beginning of the ordinance, we have a purpose and intent section, and then we have a section that essentially incorporates Chapter 125. There's not a lot in there about distilleries. They really treat alcohol, wine, and hard liquor like gin or vodka that distilleries do kind of the same. So, but there are some specific things that we needed to worry about with regard to brew pubs because they have a specific definition in the statute. So in essence, we just incorporate that by reference. So the ordinance then creates definitions, as you see in the next section, .030, that the one that I was mentioning there, brew pub, has a fairly specific definition in Chapter 125, and that's the only part of the code where we look at volumes, where you'll see, you may ask, well, why is one, say, 10,000 barrels, but there's really nothing about volume for a brewery or a distillery or winery in terms of the volume of it. So we've created those definitions, 6 definitions, 7 definitions, and then the table really sets forth in the zoning code then what areas of the community they would be allowed in by zoning district. So we also have some development standards that I'll go into in a bit. So the next slide, Brandy. So the city has 3 commercial districts, light industrial. So we looked at not having these in heavy industrial. T&D is kind of a specialized zoning district that you may want to see a development that incorporates some commercial into it. So this table really creates a matrix of where they would be permitted as of right. So they are not a conditional use, they're not a special use, they are an allowed use. And you'll see that the breweries are viewed as larger scale enterprises. Brew pubs could fit in any of those zoning districts. And they currently operate in some of these zoning districts, so we wanted to make sure that they were incorporated. Distilleries, again, could be in the B1 and more in the highway commercial, so the B1 in the downtown or in the light industrial or the commercial. The number 1 that's there really gets back to, you may see these, a micro distillery or a nano brewery in conjunction with another permitted use. So a bowling alley could have a nano brewery, for example. So that's kind of where we were getting with that notion there. And then we can come back to these slides as we're finishing up here. So the next slide, Brandy, really just to let you know that as part of drafting this ordinance, we wanted to get involvement with the city clerk because we want to make sure that this ordinance really doesn't get into the fray of liquor license issuance by the city council, that this is really looking at the zoning aspects of where should these types of uses be allowed, and the council will continue to deal with the Class 1, Class A, Class B beer liquor licenses. We reviewed it with the city attorney and then reached out to the utilities manager because some of these, depending on the scale of it, can impact, water use and wastewater, especially depending, and I'm not familiar with the type of wastewater system you have, but you can have a lot of biological oxygen demand, BOD, with a certain type of wastewater treatment plant. And so we just wanted to have an allowance in here that if a new proposal comes in, they would coordinate with the city to make sure that there's adequate water and that there may be a pre-treatment needed for the wastewater before it enters into the city system. So I think that covers it. I think we tried to keep it simple and again, ensure that the existing businesses were allowed to proceed, so we weren't trying to throw any monkey wrenches into current operations that are currently in the city. So we're recommending that this go on to the city council, but to amend the zoning code. And then I'll be happy and then to answer any questions. And then if Brandy or Sam or Amy want to help me out, that'd be great too.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kirch. Okay, I'll take a motion on this first. So if anybody wants to give me a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve ordinance for creating chapter 17.117 breweries, brew pubs, wineries, and distilleries of the municipal code.
I'll second that.
Okay, so now questions. Who has some questions?
This is Patricia. It's a pretty simple question. On page 3, at the very beginning, it's 17.117.050. And the very first paragraph, it talks about breweries, brew pubs, distilleries, micro distilleries, wineries, but it doesn't mention the nano breweries. Is that because they're permitted accessory under principal use, or why wouldn't nano breweries be in there?
We could include them if you want. I think that is primarily the answer, is that they are really almost like a accessory use to another principal use. That we were looking at those broad categories, but it wouldn't hurt to add them if you would like. And then I did kind of skip over those standards, but so we were looking at, I apologize for that. So there's really 7 standards. So if these things operate, we want to make sure that they're compatible with the neighborhood, surrounding uses, whatever they might be, residential or other commercial uses that we want to see, adherence to, parking standards and how products are brought in, storage of materials, and depending on the size and scale. Again, some of these are so small they operate in your community now and they're not a problem. So we don't think that they're going to become a problem. But those were the I guess as with the city evaluates a proposal, these were the 7 criteria that we were looking at.
Okay. Mr. Kirsch, I got just a quick question. On the table,
Yes, sir.
where the micro distilleries and the nano breweries have a 1 biome. So just so I make sure I understand it correctly, those couldn't be, but they're not standalone. They have to be part of another business, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
That's what I assumed. I just wanted to make sure I was interpreting that right.
Yeah, I think they're very small scale usually. Yep. And if you go online and look at some of these facilities, a micro distillery, you can make a gallon batch or 10 gallons or something. That's kind of on the scale we're talking about, but not having that codified as to what volume is. When do you go from a micro to a conventional distillery?
So if somebody wanted to open a micro brewery or a micro distillery in their garage, they couldn't do it. They have to be part of a different business.
Yeah. If you mean a garage, like at your house, then
like in a traditional neighborhood where the one is.
Yeah, those are that type of alcohol is very highly regulated with the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms, so ATF. So I think it's pretty hard for an individual homeowner to try to get. I mean, they do it as a hobby, and that you're never going to control that or stop it. So this would not something that would happen in conjunction with residential. It would only be if they can get a permit somehow through the ATF.
Okay. Same with the brewery.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of home brewers, and they'll do it at. And that's really how most of these folks get into the business. Is they're a home brewer for 10 years and they do it at a small scale. But even a nano brewery would be a little bit larger than what a typical home brewer would do.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Amy, could you just give us the background on traditional neighborhood district? Because I think that's maybe a little bit of a confusing term for folks who haven't been around for a long time. Thank you.
Sure. So the T&D neighborhood district really is a mixed use district. So typically our R1 would only allow the residential uses. Well, the T&D requires specific uses like commercial be included in that zoning district. So Sterling Ponds is a T&D, and we run into this because now we've got the bulk of residential there, and yet we don't have the commercial necessarily that is required. So that's one place where staff is kind of watching how the T&D develops, if you will, because it needs to have that type of commercial located within it. So.
That was intended as a mix of commercial and, or an area where there's a mix of commercial and some residential kind of blended in.
Yeah, I think really the true form of a T&D would be a neighborhood with a small commercial node or district that would provide for neighborhood services that might be needed in the area.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yep.
Actually, probably a couple. So the brew pub here was identified as 10,000 barrels a year. Is that typical from what the research you've done? I have no idea what 10,000 barrels is. Are we going to restrict additional businesses coming in because of that, or do they move up into a brewery? How does that? I mean, what does that look like in the studies that have been done?
Well, 10,000 barrels is quite a lot, but that's the cap on what a brew pub can do in Wisconsin, and that's the part of section or the state statute in 125. So that's specifically in the state statute. That's about the only definition in here that we essentially borrowed from chapter 125.
Okay.
And then once you go beyond that, then you're looking at really a brewery and not a brew pub. And a brew pub typically includes a restaurant. So you have breweries that don't have restaurants. You have larger scale breweries that do have restaurants, and then you kind of get into the type of restaurant license that they may need. As we understood it with talking to the city clerk, if you have a brewery, if I'm remembering this conversation correctly, you really can't have a restaurant as part of a brewery. It has to be like a separate entity. But a brew pub essentially requires a restaurant. That's really what its whole nature is.
Okay.
So once you go beyond the 10,000 barrels, then you're really becoming a brewery. And you may or may not have a restaurant. The restaurant has to be operated by a wholly independent group, as I understand it.
Yeah, per the state statutes. Any of these changes that we're talking about here tonight, will this affect any other businesses? I believe I heard that it did not. Are they the current businesses in town? Are they going to have to move into different categories or anything like that?
No, I think it actually clarifies. The one is in light industrial right now, which I think is, I can't wait to get to River Falls and go to all these places, but I think is it Swinging Bridge?
Rush River.
Is the one that's in the Rush River in the industrial. So this actually kind of in the code says they can be there, whereas before it was an interpretation that they could be there.
Okay.
If that helps.
Just wondering if it affected the current business. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Brandy, we have a first and a second on this.
Okay, LaRue,
Yes.
Upland,
Aye.
Prendergast,
Yes.
Watson,
Aye.
Moody, and Mayor.
Aye. Okay, next we'll go on to the director's report with Amy.
Okay, thank you. Hopefully you had a chance to look at the report. Just a brief preview of our next February 2nd meeting. I believe that we're going to have, we'll be taking a look at the Sterling Ponds 3rd edition, and we'll also potentially have a general development plan for Dawes Place, which is being proposed at about 112 units, completed in 2 phases in that area of Highview Meadows subdivision. So included in the director's report is the department's major project list for 2021. So hopefully you've had a chance to take a look at that. Large projects include the 2022-2026 CIP and the beginning of the comprehensive plan later this year. Not to mention a number of WISDOT design and construction projects. So there'll be quite a bit going on in River Falls this year. Development projects slowed for a couple weeks over the holidays. Things did quiet down for a bit, but they seem to be back full steam this week. So we are anticipating another busy year for the city and for our department. So with that, I will stand for any questions you may have.
Anybody have anything for Amy?
Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Go ahead, Ms. Watson.
Amy and Brandy and everybody, I want to say thank you for the materials that you supplied for this meeting and not on both of these topics. Just fantastic level of detail, the examples, the maps, the discussion. It's really high quality work that you guys are putting in front of this committee and in front of the city council, and I just want you to know that I appreciate it, and I think we all do. It's really top notch.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Anybody else have anything? Okay. So I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, got a first and a second to adjourn. Brandy?
Okay, LaRue,
Yay?
Huffland.
Aye.
Prendergast.
Aye.
Watson. Moody.
Aye.
And Mayor.
Aye. We are adjourned. Amy.
Thank you.
Thank you
Good New
for
Year,
everything.
everybody.